Last week, I met with Jesse Fewell to talk about his book, Untapped Agility. I started off the interview with this question here. There is no such thing as a failed transformation. You sure? This question started a roller coaster ride on management theory and practice. And even though this series here is called Unscripted, it was a little wild. So let me give you my highlights. Every transformation increases your organization's capability to change. 2, business agility is about your organization's ability to change. It's not about mindset, it's not about a method. You don't need a corporate transformation program. Just pick that one thing that you want improved and go start changing towards that business outcome. 4, beware methodology madness. And that is true for executives too. Last, what got you here won't get you there. When you start changing, you will hit an obstacle. You need to adapt your approach. And that's what Jesse's book is about. Now, up next is the Uncut Interview. Enjoy. No, your transformation is not a failure. You have everything you need right in front of you, says Jesse Fewell, author of Untapped Agility, this book here, and my guest today. Welcome, Jesse.
Hi, super excited to be here, Christoph. Can't wait to chat.
Nice. So here's what Jesse and I will be talking about today. 1, why he wrote the book. 2, his main insights. And 3, what other things came to his mind that really should have made it into version 1. But before we get started on that, there is no such thing as a failed transformation. You sure?
I think failure and success of organizational change is in the eye of the beholder. And I think too many of us who are change champions have a fixed view, a fixed vision of what success should look like. And yet our organizations are organisms that evolve and shift, and the inevitable end state is going to be very different than what we envisioned almost every single time.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking of, the big change all maximum impact projects or transformations that I see in corporates, like large scale acquisitions, large scale IT rollouts, strategy shifts, radical ones. I know that they envision something else, but if you don't reach that target or that goal, you think it's a failure, wouldn't you?
Well, so I did some work, for example, at AOL. And I did some work at AOL right before they were merged with Yahoo. And together they were acquired by Verizon. And at the time, AOL was still very much owning some hot properties. Katie Couric was also a famous news anchor for some of the online properties at the merged company. And so there was still a tremendous amount of assets, which is why the merger happened. And so if you're looking at it from the perspective of a shareholder, from a perspective of maybe the acquiring company, then no, the acquisitions did not yield the ROI that was intended. Marissa Mayer, when she came in and tried to turn Yahoo around, she tried a few moves, made a few things, and no, from the perspective of stakeholders and for shareholders, the financial ROI isn't there. On the other hand, if you ask the people working there, was it helpful for me to get support from a change management professional about what my role is going to look like? Was it helpful for me in order to get new skills delivered and trained to me in my role as part of the transition? The answer is yes, such that I could preserve my job. And so it really depends on the lens of the person viewing the change to determine what success looks like. And that's really the key point, is that if you're a change champion, the invitation for you is to see success from multiple perspectives. and to acknowledge that, yeah, absolutely, there are some missed expectations here. But just because one expectation is not hit does not mean that you have the right to feel sorry for yourself.
Is that something that you were considering when writing the book? Because in the intro last episode, I mentioned that you are using multiple perspectives on the challenge. You write about the executive perspective and people who are more like the keeping things together in the middle or working on the initiatives as project managers or so. So is that what you wanted to get at with this book?
So the fun thing is, and I think anybody who's ever written a white paper, an article, a journal entry, anybody who's ever written anything, which is all of us, will probably identify with the reality that what I wrote was not what I planned to write. And that's the same for this book. What I planned to write was a book that addressed only one of the chapters. One of the chapters was about embracing both mindset and mechanics as part of the transformation. And what was driving me crazy at the time was that there was this false debate in transformation circles, particularly in the Agile community, which centers a lot of its change around moral principles and moral tenets, and that if you don't change the mindset of your staff, you are a failure. The transformation is a failure. Nothing matters in processes or practices, but what matters is mindset. And that drove me crazy because you need to do something. And then likewise, you have all of these consultants with their proprietary methodologies and models who would forget to talk to people about why this change is necessary and what it means for them. That was the original book. Was to overcome this false narrative, this false debate about either you start with mindset or you start with mechanics, when in reality you need to do both. And that revealed that, that to your point, that there's a whole array, there's a whole collection of different perspectives on different topics that could be explored. And that's how it exploded into the book that it is.
Okay. So this book then specifically coined towards agile transformations in organizations.
That's the niche. That's right.
Yeah, and when you work with organizations, what do you think their primary objective is? Why they start an agile transformation?
That, my friend, is the first question I ask. And you get different answers each time. So my day job, I run a small private practice that helps organizations achieve or improve their business agility. And when you ask them, what does that mean to you? Sometimes the answer is, we need more maturity and discipline in our execution. We're a mess internally, and we just need more structure and more predictability and reliability. Oh, okay. Another leader, senior leader, would say, we just need to be more competitive because everyone else is agile, so we need to be agile. I don't know what it means. I just know I need it in order to be competitive. And then still, a third executive will say, well, I read this really cool book about Tony Shea at Zappos, and I want to build that kind of culture. I want to be that kind of legacy creator. I want an agile culture. And so that is a very different objective. So it really, again, not only is success in the eye of the beholder, but agile, it means something completely different to the audience, depending on who the audience is.
No, that's a really good point there. When we think of agility, this is about making your organization more adaptable to whatever change you want to drive, and doing that constantly. So I definitely see that business outcomes are better if you are adaptable, and if we, like you and I, understand agility as it's a capability an organization has. It's not a method or a mindset or something. It's an organization that can change over time. Then I think this book is something that all organizations need. Because if this is about agility as a competence, as a capability of an organization to constantly change the way it's working, change its focus, Do I get you correct? Is that what you think? Is that?
I would say yes. I would say that if you're a leader at any level, whether a team lead or a departmental manager or a senior executive director of a business unit, whatever level you're in, are you interested in pushing the needle forward? Are you interested in pushing the envelope and being better at something? And depending on where your perspective is, I'm sure that you have a passion around more quality or your passion around more date reliability. And so the answer is absolutely yes. Anybody who's in the business of change and transformation, that's what this book is for. Now, in order to sell the book, I have to pick a niche. I had to narrow in on untapped agility, but it could also be untapped PMO maturity. It could also be untapped entrepreneurial innovation. It could be any of those things, and that's the hidden secret of the book. The hidden secret of the book is that we use the agile conversation merely as a vector for the conversation of change and improvement. But the principle, the pattern, for example, the 3-part untapped agility pattern applies to any kind of organizational change.
I like that a lot. Now, let me try to get this straight in my head. Well, I started off with those big corporate transformations I was telling you about. And what you say is, hey, go change. Go, there's opportunity to do something better tomorrow than you do today. And there are people in the organization that want to drive this forward, that have the initiative. And how can you make this work for them and the organization? Is that fair?
There you go. You're getting it.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah, it's funny. I read this, I think, twice, and now I need to. But no, this is really good. I think that's the context that a lot of people are missing out there. So many people think transformation must be, the executive board saying this is the way we're going, major restructuring, we're buying whoever. This is our transformation. It's a transformation, and you are trying to follow strategic objectives. But I think the transformation that really matters is that on a day-to-day basis, how do you actually make it work? How do you introduce how you service new clients? How do you service clients better than you did before? How do you, go to market faster? Yeah? That's the key. That's the business result that we want to achieve, right?
It really is. It really is. And that's why this idea that a future state is achieved just as much with small steps as it is with big projects. That truth is why a lot of change practitioners, and again, with the bias conversation here around the Agile community, there's a distaste for the word transformation altogether. That the word transformation, it very much implies that we're going to hire a bunch of consultants who are going to tell you how to do your job, even though you know better how to do your job. And if you don't do what they say, your boss will be unhappy and you'll get yelled at and moved and reassigned. And if we don't achieve arbitrary deadlines and arbitrary metrics, then the transformation is a failure, but the consultant still gets paid. And that's kind of this icky, unpleasant, dirty image that we have of organizational transformation. And yet the mandate is absolutely clear. Our markets are moving faster than ever before. And so the status quo is certainly not acceptable. But I think a lot of leaders feel pressure that even small experimental evolutionary change is not good enough because the market is moving faster than our ability to adapt to it. So there is very much a tension here about the change being big enough and fast enough and yet not dirty and not misled. It's messy.
Well, I do think, I've been a management consultant myself, and of course I was part of these big transformational programs. And the company here today, I often think, we must be addressing, that new market and all. But what I find personally, what helps so much is, let's just assume we want to increase, Net Promoter Score in our base to, let's just say, most people would give an 8 out of 10 score. And let's just say today we were at an average 6 or 7, let's just say that. And that's a goal. And that could be a transformation in itself. Yeah? What do we do to make our customers more successful? Just as an example. So I think that this super practical piece on you are trying to achieve something, you show initiative, you want to drive something forward, like the specific result, and then how do you go achieve that? So, and what are the tips and tricks or the very, very practical advice that you give to those people how to make that work? And I think that's the 7 chapters in here, the seven moves.
The 7 moves, that's right. And all of those 7 moves center around the same 3-part pattern, which is you alluded to it. So, for example, almost every change leader, change champion, visionary makes some kind. It's facing some barrier, some resistance, some obstacle. Like, man, if only this obstacle was not in the way, we would achieve more momentum, better customer satisfaction, and NPS scores. And yet, there's an opportunity to zoom out and look at the boost that came before that barrier. And the boost was, congratulations, leader. You exercised some initiative. You mobilized people. You energized them. You made real progress. I know there's more to be had. And I know it's frustrating that there's a barrier. But we need to take a look at what got us here, because it turns out that the next step, the rebound, requires a completely different energy, a different strategy than what got you here. Marshall Goldsmith, the famous leadership guru, wrote an entire book. What got you here won't get you there. And that's the idea behind the boost that gets you where you are today, the barrier holding you back from further gains, and the rebound, which requires a different energy than what got you here in the first place.
Okay. Of the 7 moves, or let's say obstacles, what are 2 that you find like a year after, well, you must have written it a year and a half or 2 years ago now. What are things that today you would think, okay, those are the 2, 3 most important ones where you feel, oh, this has helped my customers or your customers the most?
Well, I'll tell you the one that resonates the most with the people that you and I work with, who are project program portfolio practitioners. The one that resonates the most is throw the textbook away. Because how many people have passed their PMP exam? How many people have gone to have passed their certified Scrum Master exam based on knowing the perfect process and being evaluated based on following the perfect process? And if you're not compliant with the process, then you're not disciplined, you're not doing a good job, and you call yourself a manager, a project manager, or a Scrum Master. And the truth is, nobody does it right. Nobody does it according to the nobody. No matter how experienced purists they are.
Do you need to?
Well, given all of the results that we've seen in the marketplace, how we've moved forward in the last 20 years into the 21st century, I don't think so. I don't think you need it. Moreover, it's not humanly possible. I mean, think about learning how to ride a bicycle. You did not do it well when you first started. You did it poorly. And by the time you're a competitive bicycle rider, you're certainly not you're certainly not riding the bicycle the way your father told you to. You're doing it with your own energy and your own nuance. If you're riding in the Tour de France, or if you're riding BMX, whatever you're doing,
very different.
You're doing it different than what your father told you or your mother told you to do when teaching you. So crawl, walk, run. The principle there is that in order to do a particular project, program, portfolio, practice well, by definition, you must first do it poorly. And I think that is a big obstacle for most practitioners and professionals, is that we've been told our entire careers that if you do anything poorly, that's a mistake. You won't get rewarded. You won't get recognized. When in fact, the only way to make forward progress and gain a new skill, to do something well, you must first do it poorly.
Okay. What can senior managers, executive level, do to overcome this obstacle? Because they are not actually doing it. They're not like introducing whatever Scrum process. But what can they do to help their organization move forward?
Well,
Yes.
I would say that, and this is another key principle in the book, whether you're a team lead or departmental manager or a senior leader, executive, we all face the same human pattern because we all have the same human brain. And so I know plenty of senior executives who have said, okay, we're going to adopt lean startup by the end of this year. I want to see gated funding reviews, and I want to see MVPs on my desk in 3 months. And if I don't see that, then you're not getting funding. True story. There was a CIO who said, if you do not use the project management tool by the end of this year, if your project is not in the tool, you will not get funding. It worked. It got a lot of people on board. It created a lot of momentum. And yet, do you think there might have been a little bit of drama? Do you think there might have been a little bit of chaos and confusion that disrupted execution on the ground? And so I give the same advice to senior leaders. Be careful that you're letting the technique get in the way of the progress. Whether it's and now another OKRs is real was hot last year. Right now, it's the entrepreneurial operating system, which is a cool, also another cool, robust methodology that again is the hot thing. And it was also Jeffrey Moore's quadrants. That was the hot thing. So whatever the New York Times bestseller is, management technique, senior leaders also get a case of the methodology madness.
That's I need to think about that a little. Sometimes I think before I talk.
I mean, it's a common human temptation, isn't it?
The thing is, we as a company, we feel that constant decision making is something that brings companies forward. So constantly making decisions on where to allocate your resources. I think Andy Grove of Intel, he called it that's strategic action, constantly reallocating resources to what they think is the most important thing in the company or for the company. And I wonder, is that a technology? So if I'm an executive and I say, okay, I constantly want to focus on the most important thing for me as a company, and that should be for your customers, is that a technique? I wonder. Well, perhaps something, yeah.
Yeah, that wanting to shift different energies and different techniques. So you're inspiring in me a quote from Gary Hamel, another leadership guru, who made the assertion that the most powerful invention of the 20th century was the invention of management. That with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, where we, with the assembly line, with pay for performance, with the 40-hour work week, the 8-hour shift, all of these inventions of these techniques of management were introduced during the Industrial Revolution. And so, absolutely, it could be argued that there are that management as a package of techniques or a framework of techniques in order to get the most value. Now, what's interesting about Andy Grove's quote is that those techniques are informed by principles. And so if I have a technique of portfolio management and I have all the visibility into my portfolio and its current state and which investments are performing, the principle will determine what I do with that information. And the principle might be, like Andy Grove is saying, I want to reallocate my resources to where the most opportunity is. And that is also, interestingly, where the evolution of the project management body of knowledge is going. Then this year, there's going to be a completely new release of the PMBOK guide centered around this idea that it doesn't matter what technique you deploy, as long as you know what principle you're deploying against.
That's a very good point. And thanks for being so open to discuss this on a meta level. Sometimes I feel, oh, now everything is agile. I remember 10, 15 years ago when agile was still small or it's very software centered. It was adaptive or adaptive advantage or something like that. I feel that this is good management and it always has been. It has been good management 50 years ago to react or to be proactive towards the things that you see outside in the world, and you make the shifts and you change, and the better you are capable of doing that, the more successful you are. And that's always been the case. So that's just plain good management.
Oh, yeah. The official 20th anniversary of the Agile movement, which was launched in February of 2001 with the Agile Manifesto, created the opportunity to do some reflection in the community. It's our 20th birthday, yay! And one of the things I think, to your point, that we often lose sight of is that official document, that charter document that launched the conversation, the Agile Manifesto. Before it gets into any prescriptive values and principles, there's a preamble that says we are uncovering better ways of doing work by helping others and by doing it. That's the beginning statement. We are still uncovering better ways. How are we uncovering better ways? By doing more different things. I mean, who could have thought of social media 20 years ago? Or, like Blockbuster being bankrupt and replaced by streaming. My Blu-ray DVD collection is obsolete. And who knew that would happen? We're still uncovering better ways of doing work. A global pandemic, a global lockdown.
Oh yeah, that was something.
And we're uncovering better ways of doing work by doing it and helping others do it. So that's the underlying ethos that launched the entire Agile movement. And to your point, you're right. It's a common human passion. It's a common human endeavor. It applies to anything.
That brings me to my favorite quote in your book, or the one move. I think I used that for the for my episode 1 of this video blog here, is the giving it away piece. Yeah, so that you're actually doing something good for others and with others if you don't care that you need to get the credit for it. Reminds me of what you just said about the Agile Manifesto, and this is about working with others and for them. And
yeah, there's a yes and element here that, and I've really been meditating on this a lot lately. That financial reward comes when you align to human value, and there's people that are wanting to find the fastest, quickest way to make some money, and their heart, their soul isn't interested in the value that's received by a buyer or a consumer. And so it's short-term gain. And yet, one of the things I'm learning in high-performance coaching is that when you can help people transform their teams, their organizations, and yield massive ROIs on that, then it merits a significant amount of investment. And so when you're aligning your mind and your heart to true human value, the financial value comes with it. And so one of the things I think that concerns some leaders is this agile nonsense is about feeling good and giving money away and letting people be lazy and running crazy with no management. And I would say that yes, because they're revolting against that mindset. And if you were to align those two extremes together into a balanced center, you could find some real financial opportunity and human value at the same time.
Yeah. Now, something I notice with a lot of management systems, and that's perhaps one of the clashes that you see, there are top-down management systems. So I'm not saying that. Let's take MBOs, very top-down. And then there's a specific way to look at how humans behave and should behave in that. And I understand that people would be revolting against being seen as, an element in this organization rather than a human. So there's this other movement saying, oh no, it's about the people. But I wonder whether there isn't a way to reconcile the two, because in the end, my true, like, I believe from the bottom of my heart that everybody who works in that organization actually wants to make that difference. So if you work on a project, you actually want to make it a success. If you lead the project, you want to make it a success. If you make tough calls in the boardroom, you actually are doing this for the company's good, because you think this is what will yield the greatest benefits also for the customers. And I think there's so much clash between the top-down who management says and, oh no, we're people and that doesn't fit together. I feel that it's time not only to reconcile the perspectives, but to trust into the other person's, because we're all human, the other person's intent, and start listening better.
That's brilliant. The intent is what matters. So you mentioned MBOs. I think all of the strategy frameworks are essentially the same at their core. Whether it's the management by objectives and key results was popularized by Google. The V2 MOM was popularized by Salesforce. And these are all essentially instruments, tools, canvases, templates to use to communicate a strategy of some kind. Now, depending on the mindset and the emotional place of the leader, that will determine how that technique is used. And so when Mark Benioff was rolling out the V2 MOM at Salesforce, he wanted it to be a co-creative conversation, so that you use the OKRs and MBOs as a straw man, as an object where we come together and we co-create it, and then you broadcast this to the next level down, and you say, here's the open container, here's the fenced field in which you can play. Now we want you to co-create your own template that fits and with that and connects to it, coheres to it.
Okay.
And so that mindset is very different than these are your objectives and your key results, the end. And so I think a lot of us, particularly a lot of professionals, the millennial generation is also said to have an expectation of more voice and more participation in these kinds of strategies. And that means that we as leaders need to go on a journey. We need to go on a mindset journey where what would it look like if we were to expand our leadership to include other voices? What if we were to expand our impact beyond the next quarterly results? What if we were to have an impact on the people that we serve, such that we would leave a lasting legacy where our names are being spoken long after we left? And that invitation to an expanded leadership capacity is one that often gets overcome by a lot of finger pointing by very frustrated employees. You don't get it. You don't have a mindset. You're a command and control leader. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, is I wanted to invite people to an expansive journey where it's not that you suck and I don't and you need to be more like me. It's more along the lines of, hey, let's grow on this journey together.
Wonderful. That's definitely what I took away from it. I'm sharing this book with a lot of people, not only in this channel, but also in the company and my direct community. It's helped me a lot. I know it's helping others. Taking on other people's perspective, looking at very specific things that you can solve, challenges that you will encounter when transforming, and you are transforming all the time as an organization, then this is really super good advice. Jesse, it's fantastic where this conversation went. Yeah, we wanted to talk about your book. We went into all different level. I enjoyed it a lot. That was wonderful. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. See you then. See you all. Bye.
Bye.